Palmer Donovan didn't usually eat after midnight, especially not at rundown diners off the side of the highway, but tonight, his entire world was about to change over a burnt grilled cheese and a pair of eyes he couldn't forget. He pushed open the squeaky glass door of the neon-lit diner, the kind of place that sold bottomless coffee and smelled faintly of fried onions and dreams that never worked out. It was raining, of course, because nights like this demanded it. His black Aston Martin sat parked awkwardly under a flickering street lamp, completely out of place next to a row of rusted pickups. "Sit wherever you want," a tired voice called from behind the counter. Palmer's eyes snapped in the direction of the voice. She was wiping down the counter, her ponytail a little messy, her apron smudged with something that looked like ketchup but could have been anything. And still, she looked like the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. She looked up and their eyes met. "Oh," she said, blinking like she hadn't expected him to look at her like that. "Didn't think we'd get any more customers this late." Palmer slid into a booth. "Neither did I." She walked over, pen behind her ear, small notepad in hand. "Coffee, sure, and—" "What's good here?" She gave a half laugh. "Define good," he smiled. "What do you eat?" She tilted her head, clearly caught off guard. "Grilled cheese and fries." "Then I'll take that." She scribbled and walked off. Palmer couldn't take his eyes off her. She moved like someone used to being overlooked, like someone who didn't know she could stop time with just a look. He didn't tell her his name. Not yet. And he definitely didn't say he was worth over $20 billion. She came back with a steaming mug of coffee and placed it in front of him. "You're not from around here, are you?" Palmer leaned back. "What gave it away?" "Your coat probably costs more than my rent," he chuckled. "You always this honest," she shrugged. "Only when I'm tired, which is always." "What's your name?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Perry," she said. "Perry Vaughn." "Palmer," he said, extending a hand. She looked at his hand for a second before shaking it. "All right, Palmer, hope you're not expecting five-star cuisine." "I'm not, just needed a place to sit for a bit." She looked like she wanted to ask something more but didn't. Instead, she brought him his sandwich and fries and disappeared behind the counter again. Palmer didn't leave right after eating. He stayed. He watched her refill coffee for truckers, laugh politely at old men who flirted with her, and juggle a dishwasher that clearly hated her. Something about her felt real in a way nothing in his life did anymore. When he finally stood to leave, he walked up to the counter and set down a $100 bill. "You're kidding," she said, staring at it. "I'm not." She narrowed her eyes. "You trying to impress me?" "No. Just trying to say thanks." He turned and walked out before she could argue. As he stepped into the rain, he glanced back through the window just once and saw her watching him go. He told himself it was nothing, but he came back the next night, and the night after that. By the fourth night, Perry didn't bother handing him a menu. "You really don't get tired of grilled cheese?" she asked, pouring his coffee. "I get tired of a lot of things," he said, "but not this place." She rolled her eyes, but he saw the blush on her cheeks. They started talking. Really talking. She told him about her community college classes she had to drop when her mom got sick, about her dreams of owning a coffee shop one day, about how she hated the smell of pancakes but made the best ones in town. He didn't tell her everything yet, just enough. That he worked in investments, that he traveled a lot, that he liked quiet places. By the second week, she asked, "Why do you keep coming here?" Palmer looked at her, really looked. "Because you're here." She froze, her hands tightening around the coffee pot. She didn't say anything for a moment. "You don't mean that?" "Yes, I do," he said, voice low. She looked at him like she wanted to believe it but didn't know how. "Don't play with me, Palmer. Guys like you don't fall for girls like me. You have no idea what kind of guy I am." She opened her mouth, then closed it. He didn't push. That night, he didn't leave a tip. He left a small black box. Inside was a silver bracelet. Simple. Elegant. When she opened it after he'd gone, she stared at it for a long time. She didn't wear it the next night, but she wore it the night after that. And when he saw it on her wrist, Palmer smiled just a little. Weeks passed. He never came before midnight, always sat in the same booth, always asked her about her day, never pushed. But little by little, Perry started waiting for that door to open. One night it was storming so hard the diner was nearly empty. He sat in his booth, hair wet, coat dripping. She brought him a towel. "You're soaked," she said. "I had a meeting run late in Chicago, drove straight here." She blinked. That's 3 hours away. I know, she stared at him and for the first time let herself feel it. Her voice was soft. Why? Because I needed to see you. There was silence. Then she sat down. For the first time, she sat across from him in the booth. What are you doing? She whispered. I don't know, he said, but I can't stop thinking about you. I'm a waitress. I don't care. I don't care, she looked away. I don't know how to do this. He reached across and took her hand. Then let me show you. And for the first time since he walked into that diner, she didn't pull away. The bracelet was gone. Palmer noticed the second he slid into the booth, drops of rain still clinging to his collar. Her wrist, bare under the sleeve of her uniform, caught the light as she placed a cup of tea in front of him instead of coffee. You look tired, Perry said, not meeting his eyes. I am, he replied, leaning forward. Rough night, she nodded once. My landlord decided to raise the rent again. Gave me 3 weeks to figure it out. Palmer didn't answer right away. He watched her tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear, the line of tension in her shoulders sharp enough to cut through glass. You have somewhere else to go. She let out a soft breath. Not unless I want to sleep in my car, then stay at my place. He said it before he could think better of it. She froze, eyes wide, hands still. No, why not? Because I barely know you. Palmer leaned in, voice lower. You've told me things you probably haven't told anyone. That matters. She looked down. It's not about that. I've had people offer me things before. Kindness like that usually comes with strings. There are no strings, there always are. He didn't argue. Instead, he pulled a card from his wallet and slid it across the table. If you change your mind. She stared at the embossed name Donovan Capital, her eyes lifted to meet his. So that's who you are. He didn't flinch. Yes. You're the same Palmer Donovan who bought that media conglomerate last year. The one people keep calling the Ice King. That nickname's a stretch. I don't know, she said softly. You can be pretty cold. He was quiet. Then you didn't wear the bracelet. I pawned it, she whispered. I didn't want to, but I needed to make rent last month. He nodded once, slowly. I'm not mad. I didn't think you would be, but I didn't want to accept something I couldn't keep. I gave it to you because I wanted you to have something beautiful. She pressed her lips together. I don't need beautiful right now, Palmer. I need stable. Then let me give you that. She shook her head. You don't get it. I've had people try to rescue me before. It never ends well. I'm not trying to rescue you. I just want to be someone you can lean on. Her eyes didn't soften. That sounds like rescuing dressed up in better words. He leaned back, watching her with a quiet intensity. Then tell me what you need. Perry's breath caught. I need to know you're not just passing through, because every time I let someone in, they leave. Palmer's voice was steady. I'm not leaving. You say that now. He stood abruptly, pulling out his phone. Come with me. Where? Just for a drive. I'm working. He glanced around the empty diner. There's one customer and he just walked out. She hesitated, then untied her apron, grabbing her coat from the hook behind the counter. If you do anything weird, you have pepper spray, he replied calmly. She arched a brow. How do you know that? Because I saw you pull it on a guy who grabbed your arm last week. They walked out into the night. The rain had slowed, but the streets glistened under the amber glow of the street lamps. He opened the passenger door of the Aston Martin. She looked at the car, then at him. You really are ridiculous, he smiled. You haven't even seen the inside yet. She slid in. The leather interior was warm, the seats molded perfectly around her. He pulled onto the road, and she looked out the window in silence for several minutes before speaking. I used to imagine what it'd be like to just drive away. No destination, no responsibilities. Where would you go? Somewhere with mountains and quiet, maybe a lake, just enough space to breathe, he nodded. I have a cabin in Lake Geneva. She let out a soft laugh. Of course you do. No one's used it in months. We could go, just for a day. Perry turned to him. You're serious? Yes. What would we even do there? Whatever you want. Sleep, read, talk, or just sit on the porch with coffee. She stared at him. You don't even know if I like coffee. You hate the smell of pancakes, but you make the best in town. I figured coffee might be the same. Her lips twitched. She looked away again. He pulled the car into a scenic overlook, the city lights glittering below like spilled diamonds. The rain had stopped entirely now. He turned off the engine. I didn't bring you here to impress you, he said quietly. I know. I brought you here because I needed to get out of my own head, and you're the only person who makes that possible. She turned to face him. "You're not what I expected. Neither are you." She touched the edge of the seat, fingers tracing the stitching. "When I was younger, I used to think there were two kinds of people, the ones who got lucky and the ones who didn't. I stopped believing in the middle ground. And now, I'm wondering if maybe the middle is just where people meet before they fall." Palmer reached for her hand but didn't take it. He let it hover, waiting. She placed hers in his. "I'll go to the cabin," she said. "But not because I need saving. I never thought you did." She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time her gaze didn't hold caution, it held hope. They sat in the quiet hum of the night, hands entwined, the city laid out beneath them, and something unspoken crackling in the space between. And for the first time in years, Palmer didn't feel like he was running from anything. He felt like he was running toward something. Perry had never seen a place like it. The cabin sat nestled in a grove of tall pines, overlooking a glassy lake that reflected the early morning mist like a secret. The air was clearer here, the silence thicker. When Palmer unlocked the door and pushed it open, she stepped inside cautiously, her boots sinking into the plush rug just past the threshold. "You live like this?" she asked, glancing at the exposed beams, the stone fireplace, the sleek kitchen trimmed in matte black and copper. Palmer set down the duffel bag he'd packed for her. "No, I just visit when I need to remember things can be quiet." She ran her fingers along the edge of the counter. "I've never been anywhere that didn't smell like bleach or burnt toast." He leaned against the doorframe. "Then you're overdue." Perry turned to him. "You really brought me here just to sit in silence with coffee." "No," he said. "I brought you here because I wanted to know who you are when you're not bracing for the next blow." Her expression faltered. "I don't know if I remember." "Then let's find out." They didn't talk much that first day. Instead, they moved around each other in quiet comfort, Perry curled up by the wide window with a book she found on the shelf, and Palmer on the porch, phone off, staring out at the lake like it held answers he hadn't thought to ask before. That night, she made dinner pasta with a jarred sauce, simple and unassuming. He poured wine from a cellar she didn't know existed until he pulled open a hidden panel near the stairs. "You don't cook?" she asked, watching him set the glasses. "I hire people who cook." "So what happens when you're alone?" "I get creative with cereal," he said, and she laughed, really laughed for the first time in days. After dinner, they sat outside, wrapped in blankets, the stars so bright they pulled her head back instinctively. "I used to think the sky only looked like this in movies," she said. Palmer glanced at her. "Most people never leave the city long enough to know better." "Maybe most people can't afford to." He didn't argue. Instead, he asked, "What would you do if money wasn't a question?" Perry drew her knees to her chest. "I'd open a place, not big. Just a cozy coffee shop with mismatched chairs and a piano no one plays right. I'd bake in the mornings and read in the afternoons, maybe hang local art. Let people breathe a little." "Why haven't you?" She looked away. "Because the world doesn't hand out second chances, not to girls like me." "You're wrong." She turned toward him. "You keep saying things like that. Like you know better." "I do." "Then tell me what makes you so sure." Palmer hesitated. "Because I watched my father build $1 billion empire, then lose everything in less than a year. I watched him drink away what pride he had left. He died owing more than he ever made." Perry's breath caught. "I didn't know." "No one does. They just see the name and assume it's always been easy." He paused. "I clawed my way back from nothing twice. Which is why I know what it means to want something you're convinced you'll never have." They sat in silence, the truth settling between them like fog. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "I'm not," he replied. "It taught me how to spot someone fighting the same way." She looked at him then, really looked, and something shifted. The guarded edge in her eyes softened not into trust, not yet, but into something more dangerous: belief. The next morning, Perry woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of soft jazz echoing through the cabin. She padded barefoot into the kitchen, hair tousled, wearing one of his oversized flannel shirts she'd borrowed the night before. Palmer stood at the stove, holding a pan awkwardly. "Are you cooking?" "Trying. Don't get your hopes up." She leaned against the counter. "You're using a spatula on a nonstick pan," he frowned. "That's bad. You're scratching the coating." He sighed and stepped aside. "You take over." I'll handle cleanup. I don't mind cooking, she said, cracking eggs into the pan expertly. It's the one thing that makes me feel in control. He leaned back, watching her. You're different here. I don't have to measure every word, she said. Or wonder if someone's going to ask for something I can't give. I'll never ask you for anything you don't want to give. She met his gaze. You say the right things. Because I mean them. She focused on the eggs. Then don't disappear. I won't. Later, as they sat on the dock with their feet dangling over the water, she asked, "What happens when we go back?" Palmer looked at the horizon. "That depends. On what? On whether you'll let me help you open that place." She stiffened. "What? You've got plans, I've got resources, let me invest." "Is that what this is? A deal?" "No, it's a beginning." She stared at the water. "I don't want to be someone you fund, I want to be someone you believe in." "I do," he said. "That's why I'm offering." She was quiet for a long time. "Then, if I say yes and this turns into something, what happens when you get bored of me?" "That's not going to happen. You can't know that." "Yes, I can." She looked at him. How? He stood, pulling something from his coat pocket, folded papers. He handed them to her. "What's this?" "An offer letter for a commercial space on the corner of Monroe and Westbridge, leased under your name. I put in the deposit yesterday." Her hands trembled. "You didn't even ask me." "I didn't need to. I saw how you light up when you talk about it." She looked up at him. "What if I fail?" "Then we try again." Her voice cracked. "You say that like it's easy." "It is. When you're not alone." And then finally she stood and kissed him, not because he was rich, not because he'd offered her a way out, but because somewhere between the grilled cheese and the stars and the silence, she'd realized he wasn't trying to pull her out of the storm. He was offering to stand in it with her. The corner unit at Monroe and Westbridge smelled faintly of plaster dust and potential. Perry stood in the middle of the space, sunlight streaming through the tall arched windows onto the raw wooden floors. She turned slowly, taking it in the exposed brick wall, the back alcove perfect for shelving, the wide counter already half installed by the contractor Palmer had arranged. "It's too nice," she said, eyes scanning the high ceilings. "It doesn't feel like it should be mine." Palmer leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching her. "It is." She glanced over her shoulder. "I haven't even signed anything." "You don't need to." "It's already in your name." She crossed the room to him. "You're making this real before I'm ready." "Sometimes the only way to be ready is to start." Her jaw tightened. "And if I mess it up," he took a step closer, "then you'll learn and I'll still be here." Perry looked at him, brow furrowed. "Why me, Palmer, really?" He didn't hesitate. "Because you never asked for anything, and still you gave me peace I didn't know I was missing." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her fingers brushed over the edge of the counter as if grounding herself. "I'm scared," she admitted finally. "I am too." That surprised her. "You don't look scared. I've built empires, made deals that shook markets, but none of that taught me how to be good at this." Perry tilted her head. "At what?" Letting someone close enough to matter. She stepped forward slowly until they were barely a breath apart. "Then we figure it out together." He cupped her face gently, thumbs brushing her cheeks. "I'd like that." They didn't kiss, not yet. Instead, they stood in the stillness of a beginning, the kind that didn't need fireworks to feel seismic. Over the next few weeks, the café came alive. Palmer was there when the espresso machine was installed, when the first shipment of reclaimed wood furniture arrived, and when Perry spent 3 hours rearranging mugs until they felt like they belonged. She insisted on doing the baking herself, testing recipes in the early mornings while he sat at the back table with his laptop and a mug of whatever she was experimenting with that day. One morning she emerged from the kitchen, flour on her neck and a tray of lemon scones in her hands. "I think I've nailed it," she said. He took a bite. "You have. I mean it. This one might actually make the menu. It should be the first item." She raised an eyebrow. "You're biased." "I'm in love." The words landed like a stone dropped into still water. She froze, scone halfway to her mouth. "What?" He stood slowly, setting the plate aside. "You don't have to say it back." "That's not why I'm quiet." He waited. Perry took a breath. "I've never had someone say that to me and mean it." "I do." She stepped forward, voice low. "Then say it again." "I love you." She let out a shaky breath, then pressed her palms to his chest. "Then I guess it's my turn." His hands closed over hers. "Only if it's true." "It is." I just didn't know how badly I needed to say it until now. Their kiss was slow, steady, rooted in something deeper than longing. It wasn't about what they'd survived, it was about what they were building day by day, moment by moment. A week later, the café opened quietly, no press. No social media posts, just a chalkboard sign outside with "Welcome Home" scrawled in Perry's careful handwriting. Palmer sat at his usual table, suit jacket draped over the back of his chair, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He watched her move behind the counter, laughing with a customer, her smile unguarded, her posture relaxed. She caught him watching and walked over, sliding into the seat across from him. "You're staring again." "I can't help it." She reached for his hand. Did you ever think one midnight diner would lead to this? Not once. They were quiet a moment, the low hum of conversation and the scent of cinnamon filling the space around them. Then Perry said, "I've been thinking. Dangerous." She kicked him lightly under the table. "I want to do something." "What is it?" "I want to make this ours." He stilled. "It already is." "No, I mean," she pulled a small envelope from her apron pocket and passed it to him. "Open it." He looked at her, then opened it. Inside was a key, not to the café, to her apartment. "I don't want to live in two halves," she said. "I want one life, with you." Palmer stared at the key, then at her. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." He slipped the key into his pocket, then took her face in his hands and kissed her, right there in the middle of the café, in front of everyone. Cheers and whistles erupted from the small crowd, but neither of them cared. Later that night, after the café had closed and the lights were dimmed, Perry stood behind the counter wiping down the espresso machine. Palmer leaned against the door, watching her. "You remember the first night I walked into that diner?" he asked. She didn't look up. "You looked like you were lost." "I was, and now," he crossed the room to her, wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Now I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." She turned in his arms. "So am I." He pulled out a small velvet box. "Then marry me." Her breath caught. "What?" No speeches. No grand gestures, just me, you, and this moment. She opened the box. Inside sat a simple diamond ring, elegant and timeless. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. They sealed it with a kiss, quiet and full of promise. And just like that, the billionaire who had wandered into a midnight diner for coffee and nothing more found the only thing he hadn't realized he was searching for: home. The wedding wasn't grand. It wasn't in a cathedral or a castle, and there were no crystal chandeliers or orchestras playing sweeping overtures. They stood beneath a canopy of ivy and fairy lights in the courtyard behind the café, surrounded by mismatched chairs and tables she'd painted herself, the scent of lavender and fresh bread drifting through the early evening air. Palmer wore a navy suit, no tie, sleeves rolled, hair a little tousled from the lake breeze. Perry wore a soft ivory dress that fell to her ankles, simple and unstructured, the hem brushing the stone path as she walked toward him barefoot, clutching a bouquet of wildflowers from the neighbor's garden. Their vows were quiet, spoken without microphones or spectacle. She promised to stop disappearing into the background. He promised to never let her feel like she had to, and when he slipped the ring onto her finger, her hands didn't shake. Not once. Afterward, they danced under the stars to a record player that crackled every few seconds, her head tucked beneath his chin, his hands resting lightly on her waist. The guests filtered out slowly, lingering over pie and coffee, reluctant to leave the kind of night that felt suspended in time. Once the courtyard emptied, Perry sat on the bench just outside the café, shoes dangling from one hand. Palmer came to sit beside her, jacket slung over his shoulder. "You didn't cry." "I didn't need to," she said. "I already feel full." He reached for her hand. "You want to go home?" She looked over at him, eyes soft. "We're already there." They didn't leave for a honeymoon, not right away. The café was still new, the rhythm of it delicate, but he surprised her 2 weeks later with a handwritten note tucked beneath her teacup, Lake Como. She looked up and he was already holding the tickets. "You planned this without telling me." "I had help. Riley booked the flights. Your mom's covering the counter for the week." Perry grinned. "You coordinated with my mom. She said she'd only help if I promised to bring you back tanned and fed." She leaned in, kissed his cheek. "You're getting better at surprises. I had good motivation." Italy was slow mornings and late dinners, her laughter echoing off cobbled streets, his hand always at the small of her back. They stayed in a villa that overlooked the water, climbed hills to sip espresso in quiet cafes, and made a game of getting lost in places they couldn't pronounce. One afternoon, she found him sketching something on hotel stationery. "Is that a floor plan?" He didn't look up. "A second cafe." "Maybe in Savannah. I liked the way you talked about it last night." She curled beside him on the couch. "You remembered." "I remember everything you say." She pressed her lips to his shoulder. "Then I guess we're doing this for real. We always were." When they returned, the cafe had a line around the block. Perry blinked at the crowd. "Did something happen while we were gone?" Palmer stepped forward, pulling a flyer off the door. "Looks like someone wrote an article." "The billionaire's bride and the best scones in the state," Perry groaned. "I told you not to tell people who you are." "I didn't. Riley did. She's fired. She's your maid of honor." "You can't fire her. I can ban her from free coffee." Inside, her mother was manning the counter like a general, sleeves rolled, hair pinned back, calling out orders with military precision. "You're back," she said, spotting them. "Thank God." "I haven't sat down in 72 hours. Palmer handed her a latte. "Hazelnut, extra foam, you're forgiven." Perry stepped behind the counter without missing a beat, tying on her apron, hair already up. Palmer leaned across to her. "You sure you want to jump right back in?" She kissed his lips quickly. "I missed this." He watched her take 3 orders in a row, correcting a teenager's spelling on the chalkboard menu and handing a toddler a free cookie before their mother even asked. Later that evening, when the rush had faded and the lights were dimmed low, they sat at their back table, feet tangled beneath the chairs. "I got a call from a developer today," Palmer said, running his thumb along the edge of her palm. "What kind?" "He wants to license the brand." "Franchise it." She raised a brow. "And what did you say?" "That I'd have to ask my boss." She laughed, head falling against his shoulder. "You're impossible. I'm serious. You want to replicate this." "I want to give people what we built. Not every detail." "Just the feeling." Perry considered it. "Maybe, but only if we train every single team ourselves and no cutting corners." He nodded. "Done." They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the cooler and the soft clinking of mugs in the sink the only sounds. Then she said, "I want a family." Palmer turned toward her slowly. "Now, not this second, but soon. I want that life with you, children, chaos, pancakes again, even if I hate the smell." He smiled. "Then we'll build it, just like this place. One piece at a time." Years later, their daughter would learn to walk between the tables of the cafe, tiny hands gripping the edge of the counter as she toddled toward her father's outstretched arms. Their son would eventually ride his tricycle through the back patio before school, waving at regulars who knew his name by heart. The cafe walls would fill with photos, weddings, birthdays, first day of school smiles, all framed in mismatched wood and hung with purpose. And every Saturday morning, before the doors opened, Palmer would turn on the lights, pour 2 cups of tea, and carry one to the woman who had changed everything with a single grilled cheese. She'd take it, sip slow, and say the same thing every time. "I still can't believe you found me," and he'd answer without fail, "You weren't lost, I was." And they'd kiss like it was the first time, always.